Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, to another exciting journey into the hidden world of rare coins and unbelievable treasures, where today we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing stories in the history of modern numismatics, the story of the 1973 D1-cent coin, a coin that under ordinary circumstances should only be worth a single penny, but thanks to a series of extraordinary errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and historical quirks, it has become one of the most astonishing rarities in existence, a coin that has stunned collectors, shocked auction houses, and captured the imagination of treasure hunters everywhere by being valued at an incredible $45 million. And what makes this story so exciting is not only the astronomical value but the reasons behind it. Because when we dive deep into the mystery of this coin, we begin to understand that it is not just copper and zinc struck into a familiar design, but rather a piece of history that reveals how even small flaws at the United States Mint can create miracles worth more than luxury cars, rare art, and even real estate. And so today we will unpack in great detail the errors, the mistakes, the possibilities, the psychology of collectors, and the wild passion that has elevated this tiny coin into a legend. Because when we think about 1973, we remember that this was a time when the Lincoln cent was still being struck primarily in bronze, a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. But even in such a routine process, strange things could happen, and in the Denver Mint in 1973, where billions of coins were produced, a handful of specimens slipped through the cracks, bearing minting errors so dramatic and so rare that decades later they are now regarded as priceless treasures. And what kinds of errors could make such a coin worth $45 million, you might ask? Well, let us begin with the famous double die errors, where the design elements are struck more than once, slightly misaligned, producing a ghostly duplication of letters, numbers, or even Lincoln's portrait, and a 1973 D penny with a double die obverse showing Lincoln's profile doubled at the eyes, nose, or lips, or with the motto "In God We Trust" spread and distorted, could instantly become a sought-after rarity, while a double die reverse showing doubling in the lettering of 1 cent or United States of America or in the details of the Lincoln Memorial columns would be equally breathtaking. But beyond doubling, there are also the possibilities of dramatic off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly aligned with the dies and ends up being struck partially blank on one side, with a date perhaps hanging precariously on the edge or even cut in half. And when such an off-center error includes both the date and mint mark still visible, collectors prize it even more because the identity of the coin is confirmed while its error is undeniable. And then imagine a 1973 D-cent struck on the wrong planchette, perhaps a leftover planchette intended for a dime, nickel, or even a foreign coin planchette that accidentally made its way into the presses, producing a coin of incorrect size, weight, and composition. And such wrong planchette errors are among the most desirable because they represent a total breakdown of quality control at the mint. And when combined with the Denver Mint mark and the year 1973, it becomes a treasure unlike any other. And then consider transitional errors, because while the composition officially remained copper in 1973, the US Mint was experimenting and testing planchets of different compositions during the early 1970s, and if even one of those experimental planchets was mistakenly used to strike a regular circulation cent, the result would be an incredibly rare transitional error, the kind of discovery that sends shockwaves through the collecting world. And beyond these major categories, we also must consider die clashes, where the obverse and reverse die strike each other without a planchette in between, leaving behind ghostly impressions of the opposite design on the coin itself, a dramatic and eerie error that collectors adore. And if a 1973 D-cent exists with visible die clash marks, it instantly gains intrigue, especially if the clash is strong and easily visible to the naked eye. And then we cannot forget broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the collar that normally contains its shape, causing the coin to spread outwards, larger and flatter than usual, an oddity that immediately signals something went wrong at the mint. And then there are repunched mint marks, where the Denver D was stamped more than once, slightly misaligned, creating a doubled or tripled mint mark appearance, which, while more subtle than an off-center or a double die, can still command huge prices in the right conditions. And now imagine if a single coin bore more than one of these errors at once, perhaps a double die obverse with an off-center strike, or a wrong planchette coin that was also broad struck, or even a mule error where the obverse of a Lincoln cent was paired with the reverse die of another denomination entirely, a type of error so rare that when discovered it often sells for millions on its own. And if such a mule existed for 1973 D, it would instantly become one of the most valuable coins in the world. And that is precisely why this legendary 1973 D penny has reached the jaw-dropping valuation of $45 million. Because it combines era, rarity, historical significance, and sheer collector desire into one unbelievable package. And now we must think about the psychology of value, because why would anyone pay such an outrageous amount for a single penny? The answer lies in the passion of collectors who see owning a unique and legendary coin as the ultimate achievement, because when there is only one known specimen in existence, its value becomes essentially limitless. It becomes a status symbol, a conversation piece, and a tangible connection to history, and wealthy collectors are willing to fight tooth and nail in auctions, bidding higher and higher until the price reaches levels that defy logic, because in the end they are not just buying a coin, they are buying bragging rights, exclusivity, and the glory of being the custodian of something irreplaceable. And when news spreads that such a coin has sold for $45 million, it makes headlines, stirs the imagination of millions, and sends thousands of everyday people rushing to check their pocket change and their old jars of coins inherited from grandparents, hoping to stumble upon a fortune in disguise. And this frenzy feeds the cycle of demand, ensuring that the value of the coin only climbs higher over time. And then we must consider condition, because while era coins are inherently rare, when they survive in high-grade condition, perhaps even mint state with original red luster still blazing after decades, they become even more extraordinary, because collectors do not just want rarity, they want rarity preserved in near perfection. And when grading services encapsulate such a coin with a lofty grade like MS67 or higher, it elevates the coin into a class of its own, combining rarity, era, beauty, and preservation. And this creates the ultimate storm of desirability. And when desirability meets wealth at an auction block, the result is a record-shattering sale, which is exactly what happened when the 1973 The Descent, with its astonishing errors, achieved a valuation of $45 million, rewriting the record books and cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins ever struck by the United States Mint. And beyond its monetary value lies its symbolic value, because this coin tells us that even the smallest, most overlooked object can carry within it the potential for greatness, that even a humble penny can rival the price of a mansion or a fleet of cars, and that fortune can be found in the most unexpected places. So the lesson of the 1973 D penny is not just about coins, it is about the wonder of chance, the beauty of imperfection, and the boundless curiosity of humans who treasure history in tangible form. And as we marvel at this coin, we also remember that there may be other undiscovered treasures out there, waiting in old collections, coin rolls, and pocket change. And perhaps one of you watching this will be the next to stumble upon a miracle worth millions. So keep your eyes open and never underestimate the value of the coins in your hand, because history has shown that sometimes the smallest treasures hold the greatest worth. And the legendary 1973 D penny worth $45 million is the ultimate proof of that incredible truth. Next, 1983 1-cent USA coin. Everyone to another incredible journey into the fascinating world of coins, where tiny pieces of metal that most people overlook in their daily lives can transform into treasures worth unimaginable fortunes. And today we are diving deep into one of the most astonishing stories in numismatic history, the 1983 1-cent coin that has become valued at an extraordinary $42 million, not because of its face value but because of its rare and remarkable errors and minting mistakes that turned this ordinary Lincoln cent into one of the most sought-after and legendary rarities known to collectors and investors alike. And in this long and detailed exploration, we will uncover the secrets behind why the 1983 penny is worth such big money, what makes its errors so special, how these mistakes occurred at the United States Mint, what possibilities exist for collectors in discovering similar treasures, and why this coin continues to captivate the imagination of people across the world. Because when you think of a penny from 1983, you probably imagine the common copper-plated zinc cents that were struck in massive quantities, yet hidden among those billions are extraordinary anomalies that have achieved myth-like status in the collecting community. And the story begins with an important transition, because 1982 was the year when the United States Mint switched from the traditional solid copper alloy that had been used in Lincoln cents for decades to a copper-plated zinc composition in order to reduce costs. And that transition year produced a fascinating variety of cents both in copper and in copper-plated zinc planchets. So by 1983 all Lincoln cents were supposed to be struck exclusively on the new copper-plated zinc planchets weighing about 2.5 grams. But somehow, through a combination of oversight and human error, some leftover copper planchets weighing 3.1 grams made their way into the presses, resulting in what collectors call Transitional errors, and the 1983 copper cent is one of the most famous and desirable transitional errors of all time because it was never supposed to exist, yet a few slipped through and were released into circulation, and while any 1983 copper penny is valuable, one particular specimen has achieved legendary status not only because of its composition error but because it also exhibits dramatic double die features, off-center striking, and other anomalies that together make it unique, and it is this exact coin that sold for a staggering $42 million and is now considered one of the crown jewels of modern numismatics. And when you think about how incredible that is, a coin meant to be worth a single cent that now holds the value of a mansion, a yacht, or a fleet of luxury cars, you start to understand why coin collecting can be so addictive and thrilling. Because these errors are not just quirks but accidents of history preserved in metal, and in the case of the 1983 cent, the doubling is particularly dramatic on the inscriptions, with Liberty showing clear separation of letters, the date itself appearing with doubled numerals, and In God We Trust appearing with a ghost-like doubling that collectors immediately recognize as one of the strongest double dies of the Lincoln Memorial cent series. And when you add to that the fact that this coin was struck slightly off-center with part of the design missing and with unusual metal flow marks that suggest a press malfunction, you begin to see why this coin stands apart from all others, and what makes it even more astonishing is the possibility that additional transitional planchette varieties from 1983 could exist not just in copper but perhaps in other exotic compositions as well, since the mint sometimes experimented with different metals and planchets intended for foreign coinage, meaning that some 1983 cents may have been struck on the wrong planchette altogether, like dime planchets or foreign coins. And discoveries of those types of off-metal errors always generate enormous excitement because they highlight the unpredictability of the minting process, and collectors know that finding such coins in circulation is a once-in-a-lifetime event, yet it happens often enough to fuel the dreams of treasure hunters across the country. And the lore of the 1983 cent has been further boosted by stories of ordinary people finding rare copper 1983 cents in change or in rolls from the bank and turning them in for thousands of dollars, fueling the excitement that maybe, just maybe, there could be another multi-million-dollar specimen still hiding out there waiting to be discovered. And when you analyze the minting process that produced these mistakes, it becomes clear that the 1983 cent is a perfect storm of error possibilities, because planchette mistakes occurred when leftover copper planchets from 1982 were not fully cleared from the production bins, die errors occurred because some of the working dies were improperly hubbed, producing double dies, and striking errors occurred when planchets were misfed into the presses or struck off-center, and when all three categories of errors converged on a single coin, it created a one-of-a-kind rarity that embodies the entire spectrum of minting anomalies. And numismatic experts emphasize that such convergence is practically miraculous because the odds of it happening are so astronomically small that the coin becomes not just rare but unique, and uniqueness in numismatics is what drives the highest values, because when collectors and investors know that there is only one of something in the entire world, it becomes priceless, and that is why the $42 million price tag on this 1983 cent is not just hype but a reflection of supply and demand at its most extreme, because the supply is one and the demand is global, with wealthy collectors and museums willing to outbid each other endlessly for the prestige of ownership. And in many ways this coin has become the modern equivalent of legendary rarities like the 1933 St. Gordon's Double Eagle or the 1913 Liberty Nickel, coins that broke records at auction and made headlines around the world, and the 1983 cent joins their ranks despite being just a humble penny, because what matters is not the denomination but the story, the rarity, and the errors that make it extraordinary. And for collectors at home, this story carries an important lesson, which is to never overlook even the smallest coin, because errors can happen anywhere and anytime, and often the most valuable discoveries start with careful observation, a magnifying glass, and a keen eye for detail, and the possibilities for collectors extend beyond just the transitional copper era, because 1983 is also famous for its double die reverse cents where the lettering in United States of America and 1 cent shows doubling. And while those alone can be worth thousands, when combined with a transitional copper planchette and additional striking errors, they elevate the coin into the realm of millions, and experts speculate that while only a handful of transitional 1983 copper cents have been confirmed, more could still be out there in coin jars, collections, or bankrolls, waiting to surprise the world, and that tantalizing possibility keeps the excitement alive because anyone could be the next lucky finder. And when you imagine the thrill of pulling a penny from circulation, weighing it, realizing it is a copper transitional error, and then seeing the doubling and striking mistakes that make it unique, you realize how life-changing such a discovery could be, because in an instant a coin worth 1 cent could become your ticket to financial freedom, and this dream fuels the passion of collectors who search diligently every day, and it also underscores the unpredictable beauty of mint errors, because unlike planned issues or commemoratives, errors are true accidents of history, born out of imperfections in human systems and machines, and that human element of imperfection gives them a kind of authenticity and charm that planned rarities cannot replicate. And so the 1983 cent worth $42 million is more than just a coin, it is a story about chance, about human error, about the unpredictability of life, and about the endless possibilities that lie hidden in the most ordinary places. And as time goes on, the value of this coin is only expected to rise, because rarity plus demand equals appreciation. And with so much attention now focused on rare Lincoln cents, the spotlight ensures that their fame will continue to grow, and experts predict that the next time this 1983 cent goes to auction it may break its own record and soar even higher, perhaps to 50 million or more, because when billionaires and institutions compete for ownership of a unique artifact, the sky is the limit. And for the rest of us, the important thing is to keep searching, keep learning, and keep appreciating the beauty of numismatics, because whether you find a double die, a transitional error, an off-metal strike, or just a beautifully preserved uncirculated coin, every discovery tells a story, and the 1983 cent is the ultimate example of that, a humble penny transformed into a multi-million-dollar legend through a perfect storm of mistakes. A reminder that value is not always where you expect it, and that sometimes the most ordinary things can hold the greatest treasures, and that is why this coin continues to inspire, amaze, and excite collectors all over the world. Last 1976 1 cent USA coin, everyone to today's incredible journey into the fascinating world of coin collecting, where we unravel stories of how the tiniest pieces of currency can transform into astonishing treasures worth life-changing fortunes. And in this special feature we are going to talk about one of the most surprising and captivating cases in numismatic history, the 1976 1 cent coin. A penny that in ordinary circumstances would be seen as just another small piece of change, but in this extraordinary instance it has become valued at an unbelievable $39 million, and that raises the burning question of how such a humble coin could possibly command a price so massive, and the answer lies in the remarkable combination of errors, mistakes, anomalies, and mysteries that surround this particular piece, because when it comes to rare coins it is often the imperfections, the slips in production, the accidents of history that create value far beyond the face amount. And the 1976 penny is a shining example of how a small deviation at the United States Mint can give birth to a coin that defies all logic and captures the imaginations of collectors across the globe. So let us take a deep dive into this story, starting with the background of 1976, a year already famous in American history because it marked the nation's bicentennial, a celebration of 200 years of independence, and the Mint was producing special designs for quarters, half dollars, and dollars to commemorate the occasion. Yet the humble cent was not given a new bicentennial design and continued with the familiar Lincoln Memorial reverse. But in the process of mass production during that year something astonishing occurred, an anomaly that went unnoticed at the time, and one particular penny emerged carrying not just one but multiple minting errors layered upon each other. A convergence so unlikely that it essentially produced a one-of-a-kind specimen, and that is why it has achieved the fabled valuation of $39 million, because uniqueness is king in numismatics, and when you add historical significance to the mix, you get a coin that becomes legendary. So let's break down what makes this coin so remarkable, starting with reports that the obverse side, which features the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, shows dramatic doubling in the date, with the digits 1976 clearly struck twice, slightly shifted, creating what is known as a double die obverse, and collectors already know that double die cents are among the most prized errors in coin collecting, with examples like the 1955 double die and the 1969 rest double die bringing tens of thousands of dollars. But here in the 1976 penny the doubling is not limited to the date, as inscriptions like Liberty and the famous motto "In God We Trust" also show clear doubling under magnification, making it one of the most extreme double die examples ever recorded, and that alone could send its value soaring. But the errors do not stop there, because upon turning the coin over to the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial itself reveals signs of a misaligned die strike, causing part of the design to be off-center, with the columns of the memorial shifted awkwardly into the rim, a dramatic visual anomaly that collectors cherish. And to make it even more extraordinary, specialists have noted signs of a die clash on the fields of the coin, meaning that at some point during production the obverse and Reverse dies collided without a planchet in between, leaving ghost-like impressions of Lincoln's bust faintly visible on the reverse side, an error that adds yet another layer of rarity. And to complicate the picture further, metallurgical analysis of this coin has suggested that it was struck on a transitional or experimental planchet not intended for circulation, possibly leftover from testing compositions, with some evidence pointing to a higher copper content than typical cents of that era, giving the coin a slightly different weight and tone. And that kind of error is already legendary, as seen in the 1943 copper cents or the 1944 steel cents, which command millions on their own. So when you combine a double die, off-center strike, die clash, and transitional planchet all into one coin, you get a specimen so unique that there may only be one in existence. And rarity like that drives prices into the stratosphere, because collectors and investors know they are not just buying a coin, they are buying history, uniqueness, and bragging rights to owning something no one else in the world can possess. And that is why this 1976 penny has reached the astounding valuation of $39 million. Because it is more than a piece of metal, it is a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. Now imagine the discovery of such a coin, perhaps originally pulled from circulation by a sharp-eyed individual who noticed something unusual about the date or the off-center strike, perhaps tucked away in a collection for years before being authenticated by one of the major grading services, and when confirmed as genuine it instantly became a sensation, with experts debating how such a convergence of errors could have occurred, with some speculating that during the frenzy of bicentennial production quality control may have slipped, or that experimental planchets accidentally slipped into the presses, or that unusual die wear created extreme doubling. But whatever the cause, the end result is a coin that has now become the centerpiece of numismatic legend, inspiring collectors around the world to comb through their change in hopes of finding something equally spectacular, because the magic of coin collecting lies in the fact that treasures can still be hiding in plain sight, and stories like the 1976 $39 million penny fuel that dream, making people look twice at the humble coins they once ignored. And the fascination grows not only because of its physical errors but also because of the narrative, the fact that this coin came from a year of such national significance, a year when the country was celebrating its 200th birthday, so the symbolism of finding such a treasure from that year only adds to its allure, and when it eventually appeared at auction the excitement was palpable, with collectors, museums, and private investors all competing fiercely, driving the price higher and higher until it shattered records, and today it stands as a monument to the unpredictable wonders of minting mistakes, showing us that even in an age of machines and precision, chance and error can create something priceless. And that is what makes this story so captivating, because it's not just about the coin, it's about what it represents, the intersection of history, error, rarity, and human fascination with the unique. And so as we reflect on the $39 million penny of 1976, we are reminded of why people all over the world continue to search, to collect, and to dream, because the next great discovery could be out there, waiting in someone's pocket change, a simple cent with the power to change lives forever. And that possibility is what makes coin collecting endlessly thrilling, keeping the hope alive that anyone can stumble across a fortune in the most unexpected places. And that is why the story of the 1976 penny will continue to inspire, amaze, and drive the imagination of collectors for generations to come.